You're listening to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast covering the wild world of college football. On tap for today are hot takes, controversy, and analysis on your favorite team. Here's your host, Hampton Sipper, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I've got Mr. Chase Haney joining me tonight for a joyous celebration. We're going to be recapping Conference Championship weekend. We're going to be reacting to the college football playoff final rankings and the matchups that are going to be held on January 1st, New Year's Day. We've got a lot to cover. What an incredible weekend of football. And before we kind of dive right in, going to tell you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave us a like, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell. Follow us on social media, and we love hearing from you guys. And man, what a season this has been, and what a season it has been for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Chase, I'm going to kick it over to you to start our conversation with the SEC championship game. Alabama defeating Georgia 27-24.
Man, what a Saturday. It really is. I think that after the game, and I think that we texted each other this, but just what a game, what a team, and really what a season. And I am definitely in the camp that this might be one of the most impressive Saban seasons ever. And for multiple reasons. So, Hampton, I'm actually going to throw it to you for a second, and you don't got to spend much time here. But I think that you don't appreciate Saturday if you don't just have a small glimpse of how we got here. So just maybe kind of start off, because I think context really does matter. Just kind of give me a little bit of build up. I'll fill in some holes, and we can talk about Saturday. So maybe even give me kind of lead up to the season, some questions that were being asked, and what got us to a team that a lot of people had written off to even being in the position to play in an SEC championship.
I think this is a great place to start because you're spot on. And again, spot on. This has been an incredible coaching job, an incredible transformation of a team. Because heading into the year, I picked Alabama to win the SEC West. And there were a lot of reasons for that. I really believed in the offensive line. I really believed in the defense. I believed in the coordinator hires of Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele. And I felt like whoever was at quarterback, that the Tide would get it figured out. Well, early on in the year, I got one thing right. The defense, I feel like all year has been really, really good to elite. But the offense was a train wreck to start the year. And I think we can all be honest with that. I think Jalen Milroe showed you his inexperience, showed you some of his flaws early in the year with decision making, with the hesitancy to take off and run. I feel like Tommy Rees was still trying to kind of figure out how to call a game for him that fit his strengths. The offensive line was a massive liability. Caden Proctor at left tackle was struggling big time. Darian Dalcourt was getting overpowered at right guard earlier in the year. And that caused a lot of issues for the Tide. In the Texas game, that front really exposed a lot of weaknesses for Alabama. Cy Ford again, the offensive line didn't play very well. And really, the offensive line didn't coalesce until the Texas A&M game when they put Jaden Roberts in the lineup at right guard. When he got inserted in the lineup, and I don't think he played outstanding against A&M, but from that point forward, he kept improving, and as he kept improving, the offensive line as a whole did. And I think that's really kind of the key to the season. And this kind of personifies not only offensive line, but the quarterback as well. What was a weakness became a strength. What was a liability became an asset. Because the offensive line from really, I would say probably the Tennessee game on, has been outstanding. I think they've allowed, before Saturday, which we'll dive into the game here more in a minute, they've given up like one or two sacks in the past 4 or 5 games, and I'm pretty sure the sack they gave up was not on them. It was on Jalen Milroe holding the ball too long. And then Jalen Milroe became a guy in the beginning of the year that was turnover prone, that had a lot of questionable decision making, to becoming. I mean, he's now being talked about in New York, going to New York for the Heisman ceremony. Now he's not going to win it, nor should he, but that is a massive transformation, and he still has a long way to go, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And he still makes decisions that will have you scratching your head. But the improvement has been absolutely remarkable. And that's a testament to these players coming together, putting their head down and working, but also that coaching staff, like you mentioned, Chase, Eric Wolford along the offense line, getting that unit to where we'll talk about what they did to Georgia on Saturday, but they are playing very, very well as a unit. They look like a Joe Moore winner right now. Quarterback improved. Tommy Reese really kind of getting a feel for this team and his personnel. And then defensively, like I said, they've been what they've been all year. And it's just been remarkable to watch. It's been fun. It's been a fun team to kind of grow with. And it kind of all culminated on Saturday. And I can't wait to kind of dive into this game and what we witnessed and what it means going forward for the Tide and for college football as a whole, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I think we still go back to just. I mean, what a coaching job, but you got to give players credit to the players, and not that anybody's arguing otherwise. But man, just to believe in yourself and believe that this team could be what everyone might have even said, hey, on the best of cases, this is what they could be. And they believed that they could be that. And like you said, you saw players get better. One of the things that I saw when they threw up the starting lineups, as you know, Alabama trots out there, I was like, wow, we've got one senior on offense. And he didn't even start at Alabama, you know? And so there's just a clear
Burton,
just experience gap that the only way you get experience is to, go play. And let's go ahead and get into the game a little bit. I want to start by just making some general observations. I'm going to toss it to you, and then we can just kind of pass it back and forth.
Yeah.
What I saw at the beginning of this is my big takeaway. At the beginning, I saw Milroe seemingly trying to make the throw that he made at Auburn
the whole game
several times. Which, respect to you for completing it when it mattered. But there was a couple throws that, especially towards the end zone, that it felt like he was trying to throw it to, just trying to hit the pylon type thing. It's like, hey, we don't really need you to hit the pylon. Just if you'll give our guy a chance, that'd be the best thing in this scenario. And I don't say that put him down, but just like, I think that he'd even done something he didn't know that he could do himself. And I think when you do that, what do you try to do? Well, can I do this every play?
Yeah.
And I can see that. I felt there was a little bit of tension between him trying to make plays like that, but then also with his legs. I think that the double spy that, of course, CBS, they pointed out, that was new. But I think if I can sit there and say, if they're going to double spy Milroe, they're not getting any pressure on him, and things are going to be open downfield. And here's my takeaway, and I'm going to throw it to you just so I don't sit here and talk about everything. But what I learned, which I think is everybody's takeaway, is that this team has developed to a point that everyone was talking about. Hey, Milroe has to be the difference maker. That's how Alabama wins this game, is that he is special. And what I saw on Saturday is that he does not have to be upper echelon, elite, special. The only reason we won is because he played out of his mind. I saw a guy who played for if you look at his season this year, he played a par. Great football.
Mm-hmm.
And what he didn't do was turn the ball over. And I just texted you and said, hey, I got a feeling it's just one of those games that things are evenly matched. It's going to come down to turnovers. And he didn't turn the ball over, which that's how they talk about if you want to get better at golf, so many people start trying to hit the driver farther or more straight. It's like, hey, if you want to get better at golf, quit triple putting. And that's the same thing. If you want to be a better quarterback, quit turning the ball over. And I learned that he does not have to be special. And I think just from a macro level, if you look at this season and last season, and Graham pointed this out on a pod last season, and it stuck with me because I felt like it was just really accurate, but it was profound but really simple, was that if you want to win football games, there's offense, there's defense, and there's special teams, and you got to win two of those. And what I saw is, I'll kind of call it almost even, if you want to say on offense, I think defense we played great, but again, it came down to special teams. They missed a kick, and Will Reichert, who I've been a little bit critical of just in big moments in big games, way to pull through because again, it matters when you play great teams. So again, what I just feel like Milroe did not have to be special. I love that. I hope that just means that he doesn't feel the pressure to be special because this team has his back, and then also that hey, there's things like special teams that really matter. And that's one of those things that's kind of been swept up under the rug a little bit of we used to get a ton of penalties and special teams was poor. And credit to them for beating Georgia in the penalty battle and beating them in the special teams. So I know it kind of did a little bit of a shotgun effect. So I want to give you the freedom to maybe zone in on a couple of those, but then also take it in whatever direction you feel like. Because man, what a game. And I think that everyone was holding on to the very end. It was not one that was done at halftime. So plenty to talk about. You have the floor.
Absolutely. Well, what I'll do kind of to break it up, I'll kind of talk about Alabama on offense, and then we can transition to Alabama on defense versus the Georgia offense. Because I think you made a great point. I think both you, I, and Graham, all three of us thought going into the game, for Alabama to win, and I think I even said the key to the game is Jalen Milroe's legs. And Jalen Milroe is going to be the difference in the game, and that he would need to have a big game to win. He didn't. He did not. And I think another great point by you, the two quarterback spy approach from Georgia and the combo coverages they played, I think really affected him early on because he was consistently going for the home run ball instead of taking the single that was right in front of him. And the difference between what happened later in the game, the final drive to make it 27-17, and the other drives that preceded that after the score right before half, he started being patient and just taking the underneath that they were giving him all game. But instead, he was trying to force the ball downfield. He was being a little inaccurate in the short intermediate game. And then he wasn't being decisive when he was taking off from the pocket. And obviously, it's harder to run when they're spying two guys. But he looked very unsure of himself, a little panicky, very much like he did earlier in the year. And I think, and this is not a knock on him, this is because when the game was in doubt, he stepped up and he delivered on the drive to make it 27-17. He went 4 for 4, 50-something yards, drove him down for a touchdown. And then the game-sealing drive where we, again, shout out to Tommy Reese, you call two run plays you hadn't called all year, kind of a gap scheme. You motion Bond, kind of fake it to him, and then go right up the chute, go 30, 40 yards. And then I've been telling my friends this, and I may have even said on this podcast, we've been doing that fake toss play all year and kind of getting the linebackers to move and then throwing it behind them. I told my friends, I said, I cannot wait until we do that and he runs it instead of throwing it. And what happens, biggest moment of the game, that is what we call get a first down, and we sing Yay Alabama and Rammer Jammer, we all go home happy. But before that, I think, and this may sound crazy, if Jalen Milroe plays a better game, this game is not close. And I know that sounds crazy and Bama homer take. That is the absolute truth, and I will tell you why. Because what I did not expect going into this game is the way that Alabama's offensive line absolutely manhandled the Georgia defensive line at times. In the run game, they were putting Georgia on their backside over and over and over again. Tyler Booker, Hayden Proctor, the Swamp Monster, shout out to Bam's Radio, Thomas Watts, Drew DeArmond, and Redfish Barger, and J.C. Latham. All four of those guys were demons in the trenches, man. And we were running the ball with great success on Georgia. But the problem was we'd have a negative play, and that would be either they'd have a tackle for loss, or it would be an ill-advised Jalen Milroe play. And again, I'm not taking a shot at the kid, but we can all acknowledge that he's improved drastically. He is a totally different player, but he still makes mistakes. I mean, as any player does. But he took 2 or 3 awful sacks that kill drives, and then by not taking the underneath stuff that is there that are drive sustainers, and you're taking the home run balls that are more inefficient throws, those are drive killers. And so then you kind of limit your ability to separate from Georgia, because really at halftime, Alabama had full control of the game. Outside of the first drive that Georgia had, I mean, Alabama had a vice grip on that game, and the only thing that kind of kept it close was Alabama's offensive inability to stay on the field, and part of that was due to Jalen Milroe. But if he plays better with the way the offensive line played, the way Alabama was running the ball effectively at times, and I know the rush totals don't reflect that they just dominated on the ground, and I'm not saying that they did, but if you take out sack numbers and look at the overall view of the game, how they kept Jalen Milroe clean in pass protection as well, the game's not close to Jalen Milroe plays better. And to me, as an Alabama fan, that is very, very encouraging that your quarterback can play a C-plus game against an opponent like that, and you still come out on top, and you control the whole game. It's a pretty exciting prospect going forward, Chase.
Yeah, you're right. And when you think about just this team, they're what I thought, like you said, you brought up a really good point. And when you think about just how Georgia started the game, well, first, let's start about, I mean, Alabama might as well have not received the opening kickoff. We were we were on the field and off the field so quick, and I was thinking, uh-oh.
Like 30 seconds.
But I'll say that this team, and we get cooked on, then we get cooked on defense. It does seem like, and I want to give some ground here, and I might be this gullible, if you will. It seems like these coordinators enjoy putting out, like, and I know we used to do this when I played high school football, of almost like, hey, our opening drive, no one be discouraged. We're actually not even really trying to score. We're trying to see how they're going to line up against these certain looks. And it feels like that's how things start off, or Georgia's going to bring out a wrinkle, and we don't bring out our wrinkle the first drive. That's just not the kind of football we're going to play this year. And I just think that one of the key markers, and Milroe is the perfect example of how this team has reacted, but that they're coachable, that they can see what they do poorly and improve on that. But I think what we've seen from Milroe is the ability to take what were weaknesses and become this really well-rounded of what he used to be really poor at. He's actually gotten, I would say, above, to a pretty good status. So, but yeah, when he doesn't play great, it was just interesting to see how is our team going to react. And you brought up, here are my two, I'm going to talk about 2 moments, 2 feelings that I had, and then I want to talk about the ending of the game. You brought up one, which was our offensive line was moving bodies. At the end of the second quarter, there was something different, and I don't know if it was that they pancaked one of them, and then there's just this man, because that's the war in the trenches, and they were moving bodies. You felt there was a little bit of a, hey, I know Georgia's coming here with all these wins. I get that, but something's different right now. Mm-hmm. That was a moment that had said something's different. Second moment, third quarter, our defense looked like they were playing downhill. I was actually at a baby shower watching on my phone, admittedly. I was with a guy who is a Notre Dame fan, and we were just watching how Alabama was playing defense, and you've seen it throughout this season. This team makes halftime adjustments, but to the point where these guys, I know that they went in, they got some halftime adjustments, they got some encouragement, some challenge, and they went out there and played like they had stole their money. I mean, just playing downhill. That was another moment that I was thinking, hey, this is not a we're going to win because we're lucky or we got the ball at the end of the game. We're going to win this game because of those 2 moments. And that's where I want to land this plane really quick, is that, Hampton, the only thing that I would kind of critique this team on, there's probably other things, but what I want to critique this team on is that there seems to be this almost like stagnant play kind of in the middle, if that makes sense. When it's like when we're up by 10, not when we're up by 40, we keep scoring, or
Mm-hmm.
when it's a 3-point game, it seems like when we're up by 10, this team has just kind of struggled to not go first. They seem to more play reactive football. And I think that's a little bit probably to what I just talked about. There's some, hey, we're going to see what they line up against us. Hey, we're going to wait till halftime, make adjustments. But I was getting nervous towards the end of, hey, guys, we had the ability to put our foot on their throat, as they say, and in this thing. And it just seemed like we couldn't quite get it going until Georgia scored. And then we see Miller play good. So I don't know, maybe just kind of give me your thoughts on that. Maybe if you've got a reason as to why, but maybe just walk me through what were you feeling at the end of the game? Were you confident, or were you getting a little bit worried after Georgia seemed to be able to finally put something together?
Yeah. Well, I think that the middle of the game lull, especially in the third quarter, again, and you can't pin it all on one guy, but I think Milroe kind of reverted back to some of those early season struggles, holding on to the ball too long, being indecisive. And when that happens, it causes problems for your offense. And it leads you to being inefficient. It leads you to being constantly behind the chains. And you have a stagnant offense. Now, I don't know why, other than the kid just really responds well to adversity, because, Georgia gets within 3, and then that is when he picked it up, and I want to give a shout out. I haven't even mentioned him, but Isaiah Bond coming up big again. I thought the play right before half, the 4th and 5, go for it. I didn't love it at the time, but in hindsight, Saban went for the kill. He went to be aggressive, and it paid off for him. And you get a score before half. But Bond came up big on that last drive. But ultimately, I kind of attribute that stagnant approach more so on Milroe just not effectively executing the simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't explain why that is, but that's just kind of the reality of it. To me, the defense, after the first drive, and Saban talked about it after, but they came out and they thought they couldn't stop them running the ball, so they came out and played an odd front. Well, then Georgia came out and were shifting guys to the boundary, and so that meant Dallas Turner was out on the boundary. Well, that's not good. You want Dallas Turner in run support, rushing the passer. And so after that first drive where they went down the field and carved us like a Thanksgiving turkey, Saban told the coaches, we're going to play 40. I don't know what 40 means, but that's some type of defense.
You gotta love his press conferences sometimes where he starts doing the coach talk, and I'm like, I have no idea if that's like a general, everybody knows what 40 is if you've coached football before. If this is like literally our play call for what we're doing, but yeah, he's like, we're gonna go 40, and I was like, yeah, 40, yeah, 40, yeah, I love 40. I love 40.
Yeah, I'm like, if you say, hey, we're going cover 2, cover 1, quarters, like I know what you're talking about. But 40, I was like, huh. But he said we're going to do that, and we're going to play split safety. And what that allowed them to do was keep a guy on top of Bowers and on top of McConkey to limit the explosive play, but also keep a guy underneath them. So what that causes is tighter windows for the quarterback to throw the ball, and that leads to them having to be basically, the only way you beat great defense is with a perfect throw. So it limits the margin of error. Well, after that first drive, Alabama didn't give up much. And to me, I attribute them giving up more in the fourth because they were on the field the whole third quarter, because the offense couldn't effectively sustain drives. They kept going 3 and out, kept going 3 and out. But, I want Alabama fans to understand, Alabama held this Georgia offense that is an efficiency monster, has been a top 10 offense in the country all year long, to 319 yards. Carson Beck has been a top 5 to top 10 quarterback all year. He should have thrown 4 interceptions yesterday. What they did on defense, How many times did they stop them on 3rd and 1, 4th and or 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2? And credit to your point, playing and attacking downhill, being physical, and that's something this defense has lacked for the past 2 years, and Kevin DeMarcus Steele has brought it back, man. I mean, to see those guys fly around and the passion, the pride that they play with, the tenacity, it's just, as an Alabama fan who loves defense, and that is our calling card, it's just been beautiful to watch. And what's crazy is Kool-Aid goes out in the game and gets concussed. Dallas Turner's battling injury the rest of the game. Deontay Lawson, Jaheim Otis, and Jalen Key come into the game really banged up, and they still did that. Now they get 3 to 4 weeks to rest up. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, that is so exciting. And, I mean, just an incredible performance by them to really affect Carson Beck. They pressured him with 4. We only blitzed him one time. We only brought more than 4 one time yesterday. Our front 4 was getting home, man. That is a credit to the outside linebackers and the defensive line doing work. And the last thing I'll say, and then I think, we can kind of move on to a little bit to playoff talk, because I know I think we could go on and talk about this game for an hour or two, but we won't bore everyone with that tonight. But I just want to say it was an incredible performance defensively. The offense made plays when they needed. But this team, their motto all year has been let all naysayers know. Yes, sir. Throw up the L.
I don't mean to cut you off. The funniest part was when they're asking Saban the questions, and they just start telling him, "It's late, coach. It's late."
Yeah.
I just thought it was so funny that it just that was the culture, and I loved it. That was our calling card. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't think there could be a more perfect calling card for this team with the doubt that they've had and the adversity they've had to overcome. But I came on this podcast last week and I picked Alabama to win this game. And I said, this is a game where Alabama reminds everybody we still run college football.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia has had an incredible run. They've won 2 national championships back-to-back. But Kirby is not better than Saban. Georgia is the imitator. We were the original. And we proved that yesterday, man. We broke a 29-game win streak that started the game after we beat them last time. I mean, and here's another stat for everybody who says, oh, Kirby's better than Saban. Kirby is 1-5 versus Nick Saban as the head coach at Georgia. There's going to be no three-peat this year. Alabama is back in their rightful place because not only did they win the game, they took the fight to the bully. They manhandled Georgia. Where in 2021 when we beat Georgia, we beat them with an aerial attack, with Bryce Young throwing the ball all over the yard. It wasn't that we were overly physical with them, at least on the offensive line. But this game, we matched their physicality. We out-physicaled them, in my opinion, and we reclaimed our spot atop of college football. Now it's time to finish the job, and I think with that we can kind of talk about the rankings, man. But what a win, what a season it's been, but we're not done yet.
Love it. I love it. Hey, let's talk about just 2 of the other conference championships that held some weight, and I think appropriately so. I don't think we're going to cover the ACC. That feels like a little bit of a too soon thing to say. But hey, feel free to elaborate if you'd like to.
I'm going to say one quick statement. That is the worst football game I've seen all year, and Jack Plummer might be the worst quarterback I've seen all year. And I watched Tyler Buckner play against South Florida. That dude, heavens to Betsy, abysmal.
Yeah.
God bless him. I hope he does well in whatever he does, and if he comes back to Louisville, I hope he bounces back. But that last night was an abomination to the quarterback position.
Yeah.
And we can move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really does come down to, hey, whatever degree you're getting, don't let up on that end.
Don't let up, baby.
Don't let up.
That needs to be plan A, not plan B.
Yes. Hey, grateful somebody else is paying for it. Not going to talk about the Big Ten. I don't. Almost frustrating that Iowa. How are they really that bad on offense? Like, this is a crazy statement that you or I could have called plays for Iowa. Like, we literally, like, I can score 0 points. So let's talk about some games that matter. So I'll kick off by just recapping kind of the Big 12.
Sure.
Which the WWE matchup, where'd that come from? Not really sure. Had the Undertaker, handing out the belt. One thing I say that I'll appreciate is that Jerry Jones, if he's going to have an event in his stadium, he's going to kind of pull out all the stops. And I appreciate them calling Vince McMahon saying, how can we make this something to remember, if you will? So with that being said, though, my big takeaway here is just simply, I love Sark as a coach. I think he had his boys ready for a big game, which I would say that's kind of sort of been the problem at Texas, is like in the big games they choke, but then it's also they're still having to iron out. It's the games that nobody cuts on at 11 o'clock. Those are the ones they're still struggling with. But they showed up to this game. They were ready for this game. They knew that their destiny was in their hands. They get to determine it. And there was maybe a conversation, if they did not go out there and whoop OSU, that they might have been one of the teams that was going to be left out. So kudos to them. But man, Oklahoma State's defense, I mean, they looked outmatched, but they looked like they were playing in water, waist-high water, with waders on that were leaking. I mean, it was just very
awful.
I almost couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, there's no way that's the angle that guy takes. Just looked nervous, looked cold, did not look ready. But one thing I got to give credit, man, when Sark is calling plays and he's in his rhythm and he's in his mojo, he'll run a play to the left, and then he'll run it to the right, and to the left, and to the right, and to the right, and to the left. And, dude, you can just see those guys on defense start sucking wind, and they start missing angles and missing tackles. So, really was cool to see. Here's I guess just an interesting storyline. I know that Ewers, it had come out that he was going to stay next year. He's put themselves back in the conversation to where, hey, man, if he shows up and shows out, he could be one of the guys that we're talking about when it comes to NFL draft season that has decided to go ahead and roll the dice. So, anyways, not much really to take away other than they played a lesser opponent that I think did a really poor job. They let it get away from them early and just looked slow. But Hampton, there was an actual really competitive Pac-12 championship game, and I've seen people say almost. I can't get behind this argument, but at the same time, I understand what they're saying, that Oregon should be in the conversation to be in the playoff, that they should have been, because they only lost to Washington, and it was the difference of, 3 points if you matched them both up. So I get what they're saying. They've got 2 losses at the end of the day. But all that to say, man, these teams battled 2 times this year. And I'm not like throwing shade. I'm really just kind of recapping what we all thought Washington and Oregon were going to do coming into this. So I'm kind of setting you up a little bit. These teams had played earlier. Washington comes in, they win. It seems like it's the peak of their season. And then we felt like they'd kind of plateaued. And when you said it that way, I was fully bought in. I was like, that's exactly what's happened. Oregon has done everything they're supposed to. They've beat everybody. They beat them handedly, and that's why they're going to win this game. So Oregon goes in to a team that they've already beaten. I'm sorry, already been beaten by, and they're the favorites.
Yep.
And man, what an interesting
significant favorites, right?
I think it was like I don't think it was 10 points, but it was something like, was it 7? Something like that.
I want to say 9.
And I'm not crazy.
That number.
It might have been 10.
Yeah.
So anyways, man, all that to just kind of set up. This one was surprising, which is kind of interesting because Washington was the high-ranked team. So, man, what did you learn from this? What did you see?
Well, I want to address your point about people still saying that Oregon needs to be in the conversation because they only lost to Washington, and it was by a combined 6 points. Well, I've got a counterpoint. You lost to the only good team you played all year. Your best win is an 8-4 Oregon State team or an 8-4 Utah team. So you didn't beat a good team all year. And what shocked me about this game, as you talked about, Washington has not been playing their best football. They have not. They had plateaued. Oregon had kept improving. They were blowing everybody out, and they passed the eye test of like, this is a team that can win it all. And I picked Oregon to win this game, and I think Graham and I both felt like Oregon could win by double digits in this game. And what shocked me was Washington out physicaled Oregon. They were the more physical team. I mean, I think they ran for like 160 yards. Michael Penix did his thing through the air. And I thought Bo Nix played better as the game went along, but early on in the game, he looked like Auburn Bo. He was very, very panicky, just running around trying to play backyard football. And they dug themselves a hole. I think they were down by 17 at one point, came all the way back, took the lead. But Washington did what they've done all year. They responded, and they're an experienced team who knows how to win close games. And I think you got to give a ton of credit to Kalen DeBoer and the job he's done at Washington. And while I think, probably going into the year, you and I both would have felt Dan Lanning is the better coach. I think Kalen DeBoer has kind of proved in these big games he's a better big game coach than Dan Lanning, because this is twice now where Washington took it to you. I mean, and I just was really shocked at the manner in which they did it. They had a chance to get the ball back, and Washington, has like a 20-yard run or something like that to seal it. So credit to them. Credit to Penix for just being a ball. I mean, he's a ball player. That dude has such a pretty deep ball. He's really accurate in his deep intermediate area. I mean, he can sometimes be a little erratic, but he's fun to watch. Rome Odunze is a baller, and they're going to be a tough team for Texas to face in the playoff. And for Oregon, I don't know really where you go from here. I mean, this was kind of, to me, your prime opportunity with Bo Nix being a fifth-year senior. I know Dan Lanning is recruited well, and I'm sure they'll get probably a transfer quarterback to come in, and maybe even Dante Moore for UCLA. I know he's down, but yeah, I kind of feel that marriage might work. But this was a prime opportunity, and you kind of let it slip through your fingers. But what a way for the Pac-12 to go out. Final Pac-12 championship goes to Washington, and it was kind of a great kickoff to the weekend on Friday night.
Nothing against, remind me his name, Dante Moore. Is that right?
Dante Moore, yeah.
He, just really quickly, I want to like this kid. I don't know him at all. The only thing I'll say is that he's made.
I want to like this kid.
I mean, Baylor got hit by a stray bullet when it came to him. He was Oregon all the way until he wasn't. And when he flipped to go to UCLA, then the guy who'd been committed to Baylor for like a year and a half, 2 years, he had announced his, re-announced that he was still committed like 2 or 3 times. It's like, who does that? And he was going to be like one of the highest rated quarterbacks Baylor's ever had, highest rated recruits from Dripping Springs down by Austin. And it was like all of a sudden in one day, the guy'd been committed this whole time, then flipped, goes to Oregon, and then take his spot. And it's like Baylor was the one who got hit by the stray bullet. And if that Dante Moore guy, I mean, it was like he just had to be at UCLA. Probably just waited his turn. So, anyways, I just think that's funny. When I see his name pop up, I'm just like, he doesn't know what it's like to just ruin some Baylor fans. He didn't know what he did. But, hey, let's just touch on real quick. I want to get us out of here. But we do have to talk about, and I think you did a beautiful job recapping the Pac-12. Almost, man, it really stinks that they went out on a year that they had one of their best years in the first time in a long time. And just a great season as a conference. I do hope that Washington plays well, but in the day, let's talk about who made the playoff. Let's talk about, just maybe just general thoughts. We won't go too deep here, but man, I mean, my hope would be that Alabama and Texas have a rematch. I feel like that viewership would be absurd. It'd be awesome to see those numbers.
Awesome.
But man, like you said, if you're asking me, I think Washington can play. I think Texas can play. I think Alabama can play. Michigan's the one that I just think about. The only time we've really seen them play a game that demanded their best, they played against Ohio State, who it's very clear that their quarterback was not anything special. And if anything, kind of lost them that game. Did not,
Yep.
it didn't really feel like Michigan went out there and proved their best. So maybe just kind of tell me, you speak a little bit on just, Alabama getting in, FSU sitting at home, and then I'll give us just the final thoughts and get us out of here.
Absolutely. Well, I want to start off with the committee got it right. And I know that is going to upset a lot of people, but the committee got it right. And I want to kind of briefly talk about my experience with finding out that Alabama made it in. I'm driving home from church. I get about 2-3 minutes from my house. They announce Michigan's in. Then they announce Washington, then Texas. And then I pull up in my driveway and I'm waiting for number 4. And I see that Alabama logo and I absolutely lose my mind. I start screaming, yelling, jumping up and down like we won the SEC championship again. Yeah. And it reminded me, Chase, I don't know if you remember this, but remember in 2017 when Alabama snuck in at 4?
Snuck in,
and I had just gotten out of church. And I drive up to our apartment, I'm blaring Yay Alabama out the window, and then you and I went and got Trojan teriyaki. And I was like a giddy schoolgirl, and I was that again today, man. It was just absolutely euphoric, and they deserve to be in. And I know this is tough for FSU. I feel bad for FSU. I really do. I feel bad for their fans. I feel bad for Jordan Travis. But the committee's directive is to find the 4 best teams. And as presently constructed, Florida State is not one of the 4 best teams. And I know the whole argument of, well, they deserved it because they won all their games. All undefeated records are not created equally. If we want to go off that, then Liberty should have gotten the playoff. Yep. They went 13-0. And you can tell me, well, FSU played a Power 5 conference. Look, guys, if you saw that ACC championship last night, you saw the second best team the ACC had to offer in Louisville. Did that look like a team that could compete with any of the big dogs? That team went 10-2, and the week prior, the 9th best SEC team, the 9th best, went in to Louisville and beat them. And then I hear, oh, well, the ACC has a winning record against the SEC this year. Because they played South Carolina twice, they played Florida, and they played Vandy. They got 4 wins off of the bottom 4 of the SEC. That is not how you rank that a conference is superior to another. If you want to look at another thing, if you want to look at strength of schedule, Alabama's was like 4th. FSU was 58th. It's not even close. Alabama should not be punished for playing a more difficult game, losing to a team that is in the playoff, than an FSU team whose best win is LSU, who's Alabama's like 3rd or 4th best win at this point. I mean, Alabama beat the number 1 team in the country, won 29 straight games, and they beat an Ole Miss team who only lost to Alabama and Georgia. All right? So, as presently constructed, FSU is not one of the 4 best teams. With Brock Glenn or Tate Rodemaker at quarterback, I feel bad for them. I do, but the committee got it right. Michigan would have had a bye week playing FSU. Yeah. You can tell me, oh, well, FSU's defense is like generational because they haven't given up 30 points all year. The only offense they played that was worth a darn, and you can tell me Louisville's offense is top 20 in the country. Again, that speaks to the weakness of the ACC. If that offense I saw last night was top 20 in the country, but but like Alabama had to play much better offense all year. They only gave up 30 points one time. So if you compare, and Alabama, as the year went along, from the Tennessee game on, they were a different team. They've been playing better football, and they're peaking at the right time. FSU, without Jordan Travis, is not one of the four best. The committee got it right, and I feel bad for all FSU fans, but they got it right, and I that's all I have to say on it. I'm happy about it, and I can't wait to preview these games because this is arguably the best playoff four that we've had.
Very true.
So it's going to be fun to preview, fun to break down.
Yeah, this is the last thought in the end of the podcast. The only thing that's haunted me that I not haunted that's
Haunted you.
wrong one. If I'm an FSU fan, that from that perspective, is
Okay.
that I wonder if they would have won that game last night, 35-7. Do they get in? What do you think?
I think probably yeah.
That's why I think I'm okay with the decision to keep them out. Is it wasn't just that they had backup quarterbacks and injuries; it was the guys who replaced them. And then when the whole nation is watching and basically saying, "Plead your case."
Yeah.
First, no idea why the ACC is still playing their conference championship outside in December. Makes no sense. It'll never be a great football game of what it could be just because it's going to rain like it did. But it's like, that was your moment. And that was your moment to show the world that, yes, Jordan Travis was hurt, but we still can compete. And again, I get it. Great defense. But that was the moment. And the thing was, in all reality, it was 6-3 most of the game. Like, it was not what it ended up being. But that's how I can sleep good at night, knowing that I feel like if they would have walked away, and Texas was the same way, that if Texas would have sleptwalked through that Big 12 championship and won, 13-10, I think people are going, hey, man, I don't know if this is one of the best teams.
Yeah.
But because FSU, I think they walked in there, they looked lackluster. They're running the freaking Wildcat. I mean, just, dude, everybody was tuned in, and you blew it. So, Hampton, I'm going to let you have the last word, and then I'll get us out of here.
Yeah, one final thought, and I want to give a shout-out to Kevin Skarbinski.
Oh, yeah, long-time listener of the show.
Long-time listener of the show. Great friend of the pod. I think that's a great point. If the ACC is comparable to the SEC, please explain why.
Choking up.
Of course, I get choked up.
He is. He's choking up. It's really poetic.
This is as good as Shakespeare right here. The SEC has 3 teams in the other New Year's Six Bowls. The ACC has 1. The SEC runner-up is number 6. The ACC runner-up is number 15. SEC has 5 teams in the top 13. ACC has 1. Alabama went 9-0 in the toughest conference in the land. And FSU probably played in the worst Power 5 conference. And now, for their reward, they get to play Georgia in the Orange Bowl. Or the Peach Bowl. It's one of the two. And I think it's the Orange Bowl. And we'll see how good FSU is, because I can tell you this right now, Georgia is one of the 4 best teams. They didn't get in, but I think everybody can admit they are one of the best 4. So Florida State, if you want to prove that you should have been in, go beat the Bulldogs on December 30th.
Well, hey, I'll get us out of here. And I do want to just end by saying, this is just as said, that's Shakespeare, that, hey, shout out to our Troy Trojans who announced.
Come on, baby.
They won the Sun Belt. They're going to build an indoor practice facility.
Again.
Hey, they also, I think everybody thought that they were playing Georgia Tech, but they're actually going to end up playing Duke. Reason being, I don't know if you heard this, reason being that they're not that they're playing Duke is because Duke had played in the same bowl game against the same team last year. I think it was UCF. That's why Duke is playing against Troy. And all I got to say is that if I were to see a team that is playing in the whatever bowl and they don't want to play in that bowl again, or the 2 teams don't want to play in the bowl, don't want to have them because they don't want to have the same matchup again next year, all I'd have to say is that, man, if I had fired my coach, paid him $80 million to leave, you better give me one of those head coaches that went back to the same bowl game for the second year in a row. Sign me up. Mike Elko's your guy. So, anyways, hey, go Troy, go Bama. It's a great day to be a sports fan, and better yet,
Absolutely.
Crimson Tide and Trojan fan. So, hey, well, grateful that you're all listening to this again, whether you're in the shower or you're at work by the time that you get done listening to this. Hey, we're just grateful that you take time out of your day to listen to this. So, the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until then, which I think will be Graham and Hampton whenever they want to catch up on just all the chaos that's happened, you can chew on this. Hey, we'll see y'all soon.